All right. So let's talk about habits. So creating new habits can be really, really hard. And the interesting thing is, the vast majority of what we do right now are habits, meaning, and we may not think they are, right? It's funny, I had a conversation with somebody and they didn't feel like they had any habits, right? They just sort of went through their day, but none of it was a habit. And I would kind of challenge that, because I personally believe that everything we do is a habit, and we've just done it enough times that it becomes second nature. So we just think, oh, that's just me, right? I wake up in the morning, I stretch by my bed, I take a couple minutes, think about my day, reflect on what I'm grateful for. Then I start my day. I brush my teeth, I have my coffee, I have breakfast. I mean, I do the exact same thing every morning, right? There's a few little blips in there depending on what time the kids wake up. But for the most part, every morning is the same. When I was driving to work, when we were in Minnesota, I drive the exact same way to work. So those were habits. And over time, we think, well, that's just who I am, right? I wouldn't eat breakfast. I'd like get ravenous and eat it like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's about one, identifying those habits, right? What are we doing daily? Because until you recognize what you're doing, you can't change them. So the first thing is recognizing the habits that we have, and then being able to create some steps to make new habits. But all of it is learned behavior. But it can be hard to make those changes. So the goal is, again, with this community, is to try to do this together, to learn together, to support each other, so that we can create new habits together. And if you think about what brought you here, was it you needed to lose weight? Is it that you don't feel like your metabolism is working as well? You're not as fit as you want to be? Or again, you're living with some sort of a disease. There are habits that you've developed over time. Again, no judgment, just habits that you've developed over time that have led to these outcomes. And the idea is recognizing them, unwinding them. There are really, for me, three things that I talk about when it comes to habits. One, again, is sort of recognizing them, but it's about taking absolute and total responsibility for our choices. That's the first thing. The second is getting in enough practice. Again, this is not about perfection. It's about getting in the reps. In order to change our behavior, we have to do the new behavior enough times that our body learns it and moves it from sort of this kind of early part of our brain, and buries it into our memory, where it becomes sort of just what we do. We don't have to take it from our conscious brain every single time. It moves to our unconscious, and then that's when it's a habit. And you just have to do it enough times. And it depends on how much practice you get. If it's something you're going to do once a month, it's going to take a lot longer for that task to become a habit. If it's something you do every single day, 3 times a day, with some other things in there, you have more time to practice that. So then you may develop that habit a little bit quicker, because you're just getting in enough practice and enough reps. So practice over perfection, and getting in enough practice, taking absolute and 100% responsibility for where your health is right now, is critical in order to change our outcome and to change our habits. And then the third is support, right? Creating that supportive environment and that supportive community. So again, when it comes to repetition, it's getting in the reps, doing it enough, but recognizing that you may falter at times, right? You may pick a different choice, and it's not to be critical and beat yourself up and say, I can't do this, why do I even try? It's just recognizing, is there an opportunity to learn something, right? So I want you to take a minute. Think about, if you've had a challenge, whatever that may be, whether it's something at work, whether, you've tried to change your health in the past, and you've been trying to eat healthy, or, whatever the thing is, you've had a challenge and it didn't have the outcome that you wanted. What was your response? Was it to beat yourself up? Was it to blame somebody else? Was it to accept that you're practicing and to forgive yourself? Was it to say, gosh, there's an opportunity to learn here? What happened that caused me to not be able to make the choice that I wanted to make? So I would encourage you that when those challenges come, to have kind of that more of a growth mindset and have an open thought about, if it didn't work, why? What can you learn from that opportunity? What can you learn from that experience? Why didn't it work? Did you not, are there things you could do differently to set yourself up for success? And there's a book called Atomic Habits that I really, really like. I actually bought the audio because it was just easier for me to read it or listen to it on my way to work. But it's a great book, and I'll make certain references to it. So Atomic Habit talks about this as well. So, how can we sort of stack things to make ourselves successful? But look at it as an opportunity to learn. So getting in that practice is important. The next thing is, again, taking ultimate responsibility for our choices. And this is a tough one. I hesitate because, when I've been sort of working with patients and having those hard conversations, sometimes it's, my partner or my spouse or my husband or my wife is not on board. So it's their fault. They don't come out and say it's their fault, but that's why I'm not successful, or work is too stressful, or the kids are making it hard, or whatever it may be, right? Fill in the blank. Until we are willing to take 100% responsibility for our choices, it is going to be really challenging to make consistent and sustainable changes to your life. The brain is a crazy thing, because if we blame others when we don't make a choice we're proud of, the brain also is not going to give you credit when you make a choice that you are proud of, right? The brain is going to assume it's someone else's responsibility, right? Which is really kind of crappy, right? Because if you are firing on all cylinders, you had a great day, you had a great week, you had a great month, you're feeling awesome. If you're in the habit of placing blame elsewhere, then your brain will also place success elsewhere. And then you don't get the credit for all that amazing work that you've done. You don't feel the credit, really, for all that amazing work that you've done. So taking 100% responsibility, regardless of where you are for your health. No judgment, but you know what? We created where we are, but then it's our responsibility to unwind that with support, with community, with all of the things that we're doing together. So taking that 100% responsibility is huge. So I mentioned Atomic Habits, fantastic book. Highly recommend you pick it up. Jump to, I think it's chapter 4 that goes through, taking responsibility. It goes through making the unconscious conscious, like I talked about, right? Until you know the habits you're doing, you can't learn new ones. So chapter 4 talks about that. The other thing that chapter 4 talks about is attaching our why, the reason that you are here, to who you want to become, right? To your identity. So the other thing that really sets people apart, and those that have been successful making lifestyle and making changes to their lifestyle truly sustainable for the long haul, are those that have this burn, this deep sort of rooted why that is buried in their identity. Like, who do they want to become? When I've worked with people who say, I want to lose 15 pounds, or I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to get into the dress, or I want to get into that suit, I had a wedding, my whoever's getting married. What happens when you get there? Then what? Right? There's so much more to our health than what's on the scale. And if that's our only measure, and that's our only reason for doing this, it will not be sustainable. We need to define a why that is deeply rooted in who you want to become, your identity. And that takes time. So sit with it. Think about it. Why are you here? What is the reason that's motivating you to do this, right? And not just keep living the way you're living. Really dig deep on that, and then go through Atomic Habits chapter 4. That has some great information on Again, attaching your why to your identity, and again, making the unconscious conscious. So I would encourage you, share a challenge in the community. How did you overcome it? Tips to other members. Create that community and that support. We'll see you.